When it's time to frame a finished portrait, a little prep work goes a long way. First things first, gather all the materials you're going to need to frame your finished portrait. And something extra I like to do before I begin is wipe my fingers on a microfiber cloth. Whether you have makeup or pet dander or anything else you didn't anticipate on your fingers, you don't want that on your portrait. Now it's time to remove your portrait from the frame or Q-snap or hoop that you stitched it in if it's not the hoop that you're going to be framing it in. I like to hold the hoop up to my finished portrait to make sure it's just the right size that I want. But wait, before you put your portrait in the hoop, we need to take the hoops apart and use the full inner hoop to trace the felt or fabric that we're going to use on the back of our portrait. I just use a regular Sharpie on the felt and hold it at an angle such that the ink doesn't get on the hoop itself. And when I cut the felt out, I usually cut just around the Sharpie outline to give myself a little leeway because I can always cut back more if I need to. Once you've got everything prepped and ready to go, it's time to start centering your finished Stitch People portrait. This is mostly just a matter of the tiny little micro changes it's going to take to center it. Something to keep in mind as you're centering and tightening is to make sure that the rows and columns of the grid of the Aida fabric are really squared, really parallel, perpendicular, however you want to think about it, to the hoop itself, so that things look really straight in comparison to the hoop and the screw at the top of the hoop, which you can use as a visual reference point to center your work. And another tip you can keep in mind is if you're going to err on any sort of imbalance from top to bottom, I would say make sure the top space from the top of your portrait to the top of the hoop is smaller than the bottom of your portrait to the bottom of the hoop. You're going to want that visual weight on the bottom. To double check that I've centered it, I'll take my needle and drag the point gently along the Aida fabric so that I can feel as I count the number of squares from right to left to either side of the farthest edges of my portrait. It looks like I need to shift it. So once you've done that, no sense fighting it. Just go ahead and unscrew it, loosen it up, and fix it up. Count again and make sure you're centered. Once that screw is nice and tight, I go around the entirety of the edge of the embroidery hoop and pull that fabric just to make sure things are really nice and tight. And this is the best opportunity to do one final check of your portrait, making sure everybody has eyes and lips, making sure your text is right. And here I've noticed I forgot to add the year. And with all the details of your portrait double checked, everything's added and ready to go, the next thing you want to do is trim the corners of your Aida fabric so that you have 1 to 2 inches of fabric consistently around the outer edge of your hoop. Then cut a length of floss that's long enough to go around the entire circumference of the hoop. You can use any color you'd like because this is going to get covered up. I'm using the color that matches my felt that I'll be using to secure the felt later. Next, I'm going to split this long length of floss into 2 groups of 3 threads. I'm going to use 1 group of 3 threads to squinch my Aida fabric into the center of the hoop and get it to lie flat, and I'm going to use the other 3 threads to secure the felt to the back of my portrait. Next, secure the floss to your Aida fabric. I'm just doing a cross stitch and catching the tail as if I was cross stitching normally, because that's going to secure it and prevent it from pulling through during this next step, which is to complete a running stitch around the entire circumference of the excess fabric around your hoop. I usually stay within about 1/2 inch of the edge of the Aida fabric, and this is just a basic up-down stitch. It doesn't have to be perfectly consistent. The point is to feed your floss all the way around the edge so that when you pull it tight, it'll squinch the Aida fabric in towards the center and help it lie flat so that you can secure a backing to it. When you've made it all the way around, pull tight and secure the floss in whatever way makes sense to you, with a cross stitch or a knot, just as long as it's secure. Once the excess edges of your Aida fabric are secured into the center, it's time to put on your backing. I like using felt because it holds its shape and the edges don't fray when it's cut. And you may recall from my first video that after I traced my circle on the felt, I cut it out wider than it needed to be, outside the line that I had traced. This is because at this point in the process, I like to be able to tangibly see and feel just how big that backing circle needs to be so that I can cut it to size just right. First, I'm going to secure the floss to the Aida fabric, which I do just using a cross stitch and catching the tail. You can use knots or however you'd like to secure the floss and prevent it from pulling through. And from there, you can secure the felt or fabric to the back of your portrait in whatever method makes the most sense to you. What I'm using today is sort of a modified blanket stitch, just vertical stitches that face towards the center of the hoop. I don't mind that you can see them around the edge. It looks like a little sunburst. It gives me a little control. I can move the needle where I need to. I can catch the felt at a consistent depth all the way around the edge. And once I've worked my way all the way around the edge, securing the felt onto the back, after my last stitch, I'll just feed my needle into the felt and hold my scissors really close to the surface of the felt to cut the floss. And then when the felt rises just naturally, the tail will fall through to the back and be totally hidden. And depending on how you want to display your portrait, you might be done here. But I'm going to do one more step to give our portrait a little hanger that'll make it easier to hang against the wall. You could definitely hang your portrait straight on the wall just like it is, but I like to give my portraits a little hanger using a ribbon, or in this case, colored twine. The way I like to tackle this is to cut a nice long length and wrap it around the metal fastener portion of the embroidery hoop. Once I'm done wrapping, I'll tie it off and clip off the excess really close so that it just blends away. Then take another length and tie a knot so that you have a full loop to work with. How long a length you're working with determines how big the loop is, and that will also determine how much excess is hanging down on the wall. So this is just a matter of personal preference. Feed that loop under the twine that I've already wrapped around the embroidery hoop. And as you can see in the video, I just pull that loop through itself so that it sticks up above the embroidery hoop. Once again, cut away the excess from the knot so that it just blends away. And then you have a really cute, colorful way to hang your portrait on the wall. This twine is also a little fuzzy, so I'm just trimming back some of that excess fuzz. And before I can really call it done, I like to take out a lint roller and run it across the top of my portrait to get any fuzzies, or especially in my case, dog hair that may have wandered onto my portrait. I also like to take a final pass with the tip of my needle and make sure that all my little details are in the exact place that I want them from. And there you have it. That's finishing a Stitch People portrait in an embroidery hoop. Go ahead and hang it proudly on the wall and enjoy it for years to come.